Hi, glad to see you on my channel. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel. It's important to me. Have a good view. Coastal force against coastal convoys. In January 1945, British torpedo boats had very little contact with the enemy, but this was more than made up for in February. At the beginning of the month from Ancona began patrolling the approaches to Venice on radar-equipped new Vospera, American-built 1st Division of the 28th Flotilla. The 2nd Division arrived in mid-March. On the night of February 7th, MTB 404, MTB 406, and MTB 407 off Chitinov, Novograd, at about 2,000 yards, radar detected a small convoy en route from Trieste to Pola. The 5,500-ton vessel Pluto escorted by 5 Rombots. The surprise attack failed. The Germans timely detected the enemy on the starboard side, opened fire, and hit MTB 407 below the waterline. The hit MTB turned away, while the other two went on the attack and fired torpedoes, observing 2 hits accompanied by explosions and heavy fires. The British gunboats then left the battle at high speed, rendezvoused with MTB 407, and escorted her to Ancona. On arrival, they called in 2 dogs to mop up the battlefield, but those only found that the last enemy ships had taken refuge in Parenzo. In fact, only Pluto received a torpedo hit from MTB 406, but managed to reach Trieste on February 8th. On February 20th, it was hit by bombers there, while R8 and R10 collided during the battle and took refuge at Citanova. On February 12th, MTB 404, MTB 405, and MTB 407 patrolled between Venice and Trieste. Shortly after midnight, MTB 405 radar spotted a vessel 5 miles away, which the boats fired torpedoes at. The 583-ton Italian steamer Mediceo, which according to one information 2 weeks earlier had exploded on a mine at 01:30 on January 31st at the mouth of the Tagliamento River, and according to another was accounted for the British aviators who bombed it there on January 31st. On the night of February 13 to 14, MTB 634, MTB 660, and MTB 710 of the 57th Flotilla detected 3 large F-barges in the Kvarner Strait and all sent to the bottom, one by torpedoes on radar targeting and the others by artillery fire. In the process, MTB 710 was hit by an 88mm shell in the engine room. 2 crewmen were killed and 2 others were severely wounded. On the night of February 15th, 3 dogs shelled the town of Cres on the island of the same name. And on the night of February 16th-17, MTB 655, MTB 660, MTB 699, and MTB 703 attacked the harbor of Carlobaga on the Dalmatian coast with artillery and torpedoes. The British gunboats engaged in several engagements in March. On March 6th, MTB 656, MTB 703, and MTB 704, patrolling off the southeastern coast of the Istrian Peninsula, encountered 2 F-barges and a tugboat traveling northbound in the Arsa Strait. The enemy opened a barrage of fire, and the gunboats were turned away from the attack. 3 hours later, 5 more enemy ships were discovered, traveling southward through the same strait, which were attacked with torpedoes. According to British testimony, 1 F-barge was hit. On the night of 9-10 March near Umag, northwest of the Istrian Peninsula, MTB 405, MTB 406, and MTB 407, detected by radar, attacked and torpedoed 5 F-barges. 2 hits were claimed by MTB 406, 2 by MTB 407, and 1 by MTB 405. Violent explosions were observed, after which all 5 targets disappeared from radar screens. In fact, this time the British enemy was a group of a landing barge, several 6th Flotilla Rombots, and the auxiliary minesweeper Fasana, out on a mine-laying mission from Trieste. The Germans escaped the torpedo hits. On March 20th, NOAJ troops began their final offensive, one of the objectives of which was the liberation of northern Dalmatia and Istria. To thwart enemy shipping in the northern Adriatic, the British coastal force intensified its onslaught in those waters at the end of the first decade of April. On 9th to 16th April, the gunboats of the 28th Flotilla fought 4 night battles against F-barges, as usual reporting many targets hit. For example, on the night of 12-13 April, MTB 409, MTB 408, and MTB 410 fired 6 torpedoes at Venetian Bay, near Caorle, using radar data without visual aiming and reported sinking 5 F-barges. On the night of 16 to 17 April, MTB-409 with Yugoslav artillery boats TC-103 and TC-108, American 78-foot Higgins transferred to the Yugoslavs in March via the British, searched along the Istrian coast toward Umag. At about 2300 hours, radar reported the presence of a convoy that consisted of at least 3 F-barges and 5 barges with soldiers. MTB-409 fired torpedoes at the end barge of the convoy, which was struck and sank. TC-103 took several hits and had wounded among its crew. At the end of the activity on the Adriatic, the 28th Flotilla destroyed 21 enemy ships, hitting targets with 26 torpedoes out of 51 fired. Dogs of the 60th and 57th Flotillas at the same time fought 2 battles against F-barges, and in both cases were repulsed by 88 mm gunfire without damage to the enemy. Seriously damaged were MGB-662, MGB-647, MTB-633, and MTB-638. There is no information from the enemy about these events, but according to German documents, of the 15 landing barges of the 10th Flotilla that were lost in the Adriatic in 1945, not a single one was sunk in sea battles. In these operations, the coastal force lost 3 boats. On March 22nd, while returning to Zadar from a patrol, MTB-655 struck a mine, caught fire, and exploded. The next day, MTB-705 hit a mine and sank on the passage from Ancona to Zadar, killing 3 crew members. On April 10th, MTB-710 hit a mine and sank with 15 crewmen. By early April 1945, the 9th Destroyer Flotilla was defeated by airstrikes. At Trieste, bombers of the U.S. 15th Air Force sank TA-41 and TA-44 on February 17th, the older destroyer TA-48 on February 20th, and the destroyer TA-40 was damaged. On February 20th, American bombers severely damaged the unfinished TA-46 and TA-47 at Fiume. On March 21st, TA-42 was lost at Venice. TA-43 and TA-45 occasionally took part in escorting ships until the end of March, after which, in anticipation of Allied landings in the northeastern Adriatic, they were withdrawn to the reserve. After the loss of the Dalmatian coast, German garrisons continued to remain on nearby islands to prevent the enemy from using the Velebit Strait, the fairway between the mainland and the islands of Kirk, Rab, and Pag. 3 shore batteries and 130 German soldiers and police were stationed on the island of Rab. On April 11th, units from the 2nd and 3rd Brigades of the Noailles 9th Dalmatian Division and the Kavarner Partisan Detachment landed on the island and quickly seized the island, capturing the batteries uncovered by infantry from the rear. On April 10th, the Navy South Command ordered the landing barges of the 10th Flotilla to strike at enemy watercraft in the area of Senge, Jablonak, Karlobag, and the destroyers of the 9th Flotilla to cover their actions. In accordance with this order, the last ships of the 9th Flotilla, TA-40, ex-Italian Pugnale, under the flag of the flotilla commander Frigate Captain Birnbaum with only a tarpaulin-covered underwater hole, received on February 20th, and TA-45, ex-Italian Spica, left Trieste on April 11th. On the same day, they reached Fiume and took refuge in the rock-surrounded Bay of Bakar, 11 miles southeast of that port. The operation was to begin the same evening. The weather, cloudy and with poor visibility, was ideal for the sortie. However, at the last moment came the order to postpone the operation for 24 hours. Came the news of the landing at Rab. The destroyers shut down their engines and set up camouflage. After receiving a new task, to cover groups of barges, which were to bombard the harbors of Senja and Jablonatsa, in the evening of April 12th, engines were started, and at midnight on Friday, April 13th, destroyers left the Bay Bakar. Now, under a starry sky with a full moon, TA-40 and TA-45, traveling southward along the Dalmatian coast by the Morlaka Strait, between the island of Kirk and the mainland, were clearly visible targets. At about 02 UACH, according to TA-45's chronology, at 02:30, the destroyers were passing the Novi Vinodolski, Vorbnik section, when the shadows and storms of approaching torpedo boats were seen on the right from the Krarki Island side. The Germans immediately played battle alarm and fired flares in the direction of the enemy. The commander of the lead TA-40, Lieutenant Captain Goldammer, increased speed and turned to the right at the hurd slap against the water of the fired torpedoes. The next moment, one torpedo passed over the bow and another over the stern of the destroyer. Almost immediately, 100 meters behind, two deafening explosions sounded one after the other. Two torpedoes had struck TA-45. After the second torpedo hit, the destroyer broke in two. The bow sank immediately, and 3 to 4 minutes later, the flaming stern sank after it. Of the 156 crew members, 80 were killed, and most of the 22 who reached Verbnik, Kark Island, were captured and shot by local partisans and the NOAU 26th Division reconnaissance team, who were waiting for the main forces to land on the island. Engaging in a fierce barrage, TA-40 turned around and, leaving the sailors of the sunken destroyer in the water unassisted, zigzagged out of the battlefield. To the artillery barges, it sent word of its return. At 0400, Birnbaum arrived at Fiume and then headed for Pola, where he arrived at 0900. At 14, he put to sea again and reached Trieste safely at 19 Guas. Lieutenant Commander Montgomery's group of dogs, MTB 670 and MTB 697 and MGB 643 and MGB 658, which had the mission of preventing the Germans from delivering reinforcements to the island of Rab by the Planinsky Strait, got into position at Cape Hab, island of Kark, at 0130. The boat stopped the vehicles near the shore and monitored the situation with radar. At 0215, the operator of SCMGB 658, equipped with the latest American radar, reported to his commanding officer, Lieutenant Leonard Reynolds, two large targets entering the strait from the north. The distance at the time of detection was about 4 miles. Reynolds immediately radioed Montgomery. The British started their engines and deployed frontally. MGB 658 reported enemy information to the flagship every minute until it was picked up by the radars of the other boats. Soon the targets were spotted visually. Montgomery gave the order to attack when the range was reduced to 1,500 yards. Having recorded the hits of 2 torpedoes in the small destroyer, the British immediately began to withdraw to the south. Artillery in this battle they did not use. MTB 670 Commander Lieutenant Eric Hewitt was awarded the DSC for the successful launching of torpedoes. 3 other members of the boat's crew received government awards for this battle. Completion of the Adriatic campaign. The next Allied target was the island of Kirk, where the Germans had 600 troops. At 2300 on April 16th, escorted by LCF and LCG, LCT and LCI departed Rab with no troops and equipment aboard, landing on Kiark after midnight on April 17th. At the end of the day, the island capitulated. During this operation, the coastal force suffered its last combat loss on the Adriatic. Laterre CMDR, Montgomery's cover group, MGB 658, MTB 697, and MTB 633, was on patrol to the Fiume area in a tight column, skirting the island of Kirk from the west, when at 0200 hours on April 17th, at Cape Glavovo, 34 on April 17th, near Cape Glavotok, Kirk Island, 3 miles from enemy shore batteries, MTB 697 hit a mine and broke into several pieces. 10 British sailors were killed and 4 were seriously wounded. The British knew the area was heavily mined but had received assurances from the guerrillas that a 30-mile area around the island's coastline was etched. The Allies were completing the liberation of the Dalmatian archipelago, completely unopposed by enemy naval forces. On the afternoon of April 18th, NOAU troops from British landing craft and ships of the guerrilla fleet landed on Cress, and on the night of April 19th, they landed on Losange. After brief resistance, Losange fell the next day. This was the last time on the Adriatic when British ships had a chance to shoot. To support the landing, LCG fired 21 shells. After that, on April 20th, the Germans in Fiume sank 8 landing barges, 3 of them unfinished, 6 infantry landing ships, and 7 ferries Siebel, as they could not be taken away from there. Further, the Germans did away with the surviving warships themselves, so that they would not be taken by the advancing enemy troops. The destroyer TA-43, among other ships and vessels, was sunk on May 1st in Trieste, and the destroyer TA-40 in Monfalcone. On May 2nd, 4th Rombots were sunk at the mouth of the Tagliamento River. May 3rd, from Pola to Ancona, came Schnellbots, 1st Division S-30, S-36, S-61, S-151, S-152, S-155, and S-156, with their commander, Lieutenant Commander Wupperman, and personnel of the division on board, where they surrendered to the British. This concluded the confrontation in the Adriatic. Thank you for watching the video to the end. Forget to put a like and subscribe to the channel. It's important to me. See you soon.